Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ecosystem Aces. I am really excited to be joined by Chris Badger. Chris, welcome.
Well, Chip, thank you. I am absolutely excited and honored to be part of this podcast. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's jump in. This is going to be a little bit of a different kind of podcast. Chris is most recently with Anaplan, Senior Director of Strategic Technology Partners with Anaplan. And recently, I know you're a member of Partnership Leaders, and
Yep.
you recently did a webinar talking about and long time technology partnering career. I think almost 6 years at Anaplan and a number of technology companies prior to that. But so you've learned a lot along the way, and you were sharing some really interesting data points and ways of thinking about aligning. It's all about sort of metrics and showing value of partnerships, and then aligning the value of partnerships to across the organization. Thought it was really fascinating. So we're normally these are just sort of purely conversations, but we'll
Mhm.
pepper in some slides, and love to hear your perspective on on all this. So
Excellent.
welcome, Chris.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct, Chip, that this is a topic I've been thinking about, and I've talked to a lot of colleagues across the partnership community, and I've had some really positive experiences going down what we're going to call the partner unit economics path. And it's come to me that there's a real gap that as a partnership community we need more visibility on this topic, and it's going to be great. I'm going to advocate for all our careers. It's great for our relationship with our colleagues and the other functions that we need to align with, and frankly it goes right to the heart of what I think the board and often investors look for too. And I'll explain more detail why this is so important, but I'm thrilled to have the chance to kind of reinforce why I think this is a topic we need to spend more time looking at.
Fantastic. That's great. And yeah, so let's jump in. I think, Chris, I'll pull up a slide here. Actually, one of we pulled a few sort of key slides from we're not going to redo the whole webinar.
Yep, luckily, good
Um,
for everyone.
but I thought we'd sort of pull up a couple of slides here, and maybe you could help set the stage
Yeah,
with this one.
yeah. So I'm going to highlight from this slide sort of three key themes to sort of indicate why I think I'm going to advocate. This is sort of an inflection point for the partnership community and focusing on what I described as partnership unit economics. So the first theme is that in the upper left-hand corner, many of us that have been in partnerships for a couple decades now, partnerships really started out as resellers and VARs, and it was all about driving revenue. And I think we've got a lot of familiarity and comfort level with, how partnerships affect driving revenue. We get that. But today, for many, certainly software companies, there's a much bigger focus on building ecosystems. So how do you take the platforms and have them deeply integrated with a much broader collection of often ISVs or software partners that integrate to your platform? There's a broader cross-section of partners that get involved. So my point being that I think we need to take a more holistic view about, frankly, the impact of partnerships to the customer lifetime value. It's not just driving revenue now. There's other metrics we'll get into in a minute that are really critically important for the company's success. It's what the board cares about. And that's what I'm advocating, that when you peel the onion and look at how these metrics that affect more the customer lifetime value, there's a great story there. That's what we need to be telling. So that's one theme.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And I think it is so important because traditional partnering was really, channel reselling. Like, I have a product, you're going to go sell it.
Yeah.
And these days there's a lot more of, I have a product, you have a product, you have a service, like, and then maybe there are two or three partners involved. Cloud providers are involved in that discussion, how do you align and stay, and work together to co-sell together?
Ab-
Maybe you've done engineering development, right? Especially in your role.
Correct.
Yeah.
100% agree that, and this is my point, that so many, just to kind of continue that point, my last role at Anaplan, I drove our AWS partnership. And this is where, to your exact point, you've got engineering and product very committed to sort of figuring out how to become more of a leveraging a hyperscaler. There's a much bigger investment. And with it goes a lot of resources to kind of align and execute, even on the go-to-market front, working with the hyperscalers.
Mm-hmm.
So with that complexity, the point being that for all that huge company investment, how do you make sure everyone understands the value, the complete value of those investments, partnership investments specifically? So that's kind of why, from what I did at Anaplan, I think there's a great opportunity here to tell that bigger story.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue to this slide that I love. I think this is phenomenal. This really tells a great story. So take us through this this slide, Chris.
Yeah. So the point here is that what I've tried to do, again, with the spirit of how do you get a stronger alignment, awareness, and support from the other C-suite members. And so the theme here is that, yes, often we can report into the chief revenue officer. We can have a very strong working relationship with the chief marketing officer. So on the left side here, I think there's a great comfort with some of the point being that what are the key goals and therefore metrics that those leaders care about. And so you can see in the marketing side, lead conversion, lead cost, campaign ROI.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, for the chief revenue officer, revenue, win rate. These are all sales efficiency things, sales cycle, average deal size. I think we've got a pretty good story there when you, again, look at the partner influence to that sort of pipeline effect. The story that's not really often told or looked at is to the right. It's the more downstream factors. So after you land a customer, how quickly those customers get adopted and expand and ultimately drive a very long lifetime value. So this is where I'm arguing that when you start to look at, and here are some of the metrics that people like the chief customer officer or even the chief product officer care about. So user adoption, churn rate, net retention rate. Net retention rate for many public companies, this is one of the top metrics that companies and the investors look at for sort of efficiency of the company. Is your NRR rate greater than 120% quarter to quarter?
Yeah.
So that's a top metric. My point being that when you start to look at those customers that have partners, and I'll use the term attached, sometimes it's, where our platform, our software is integrated to other partners that are used in the customer stack. So the integration story is huge. We're running on the hyperscalers, or it could be you've got a global system integrator who's working closely with the board or the C-suite on a digital transformation. The point being, those are all people of big influence. So those partner attached customers, I'm going to argue, when you peel the onion and look at the metrics, they're going to have much better metrics for lifetime value, lower churn rate. It's a stickier relationship. That's the ultimate point here. And so I'm just arguing that we need to start to look at and work with our colleagues in product and finance and operations to say, okay, for the metrics they care about, these are just some of them. Let's look at the partner influenced or attached story behind that, because there's usually incredible efficiencies. And we'll talk about some of the metrics that I've sort of pulled together and seen. But this is the point of driving greater, not just cross-functional alignment, but even frankly, working with your board and even the investors. Often if you've got VCs or private equity firms, these are all the things they're going to care about, are these sort of unit economics to drive efficiency in the company. And that partner story needs to be told.
Yeah, that's why I love this story. I think this, and I don't know, I know you're saying, this is what I'm arguing, but it's an easy argument, right? It's something that should land with all partner professionals, and I love how this is, really connecting the things that we all, talk about and
Yep.
know in our bones, how partners are able to influence these things. But it's just a really clear and nice alignment for, across the organization, that okay, when you're talking to CFO, you should be thinking in these terms and bringing those kinds of metrics when you're talking to the CRO or CMO. You might focus on different things and have those data points sort of within, in those terms.
100% agree. I think I did this myself in my career. We often take it for granted. People understand the value partners bring, but then it dawned on me, no, there's a big gap. You talk to the CFO or, the chief customer officer, they don't get that. They say, well, I think partners are doing a good job, but you got to sort of bring it to their language is my point.
Yeah. Great. Love this. Okay. So let's talk about best practices. So this is now then saying, going from, okay, here are the terms and the ways that you should speak to each of these stakeholders. And this is now saying, we have some actual data and data points to talk about. So take us through this.
Yeah. And this one's interesting because, Chip, at least in my view, there hasn't been sort of a single source of truth for what are the sort of, I use the term best practices, but what's goodness look like across the partnership community? I'd never seen a single repository or collection. Usually we'll see quite a bit of focus on the go-to-market metrics. So obviously the win rates here, and I'm citing just a few that I pulled out to kind of highlight where, not Chris Badger's numbers, but a third party's numbers. So much higher win rates when you've got deal sourced from partners or partner influence, 99% higher win rate. And so these are obviously, these numbers really pop for people. If you're going after sales efficiency, you would think, my God, I should be heavily investing in resourcing my partnership team. But we need these metrics to tell that story. Sales cycles, I've seen between 11 and 50% shorter, again, given the trust with often working with a partner. And then as you start to dip into things like marketing, customer acquisition costs, I think that one's also kind of a no-brainer. Again, we take it for granted, but I saw that Deal Marketing talked about how they were able to drive an 8 times lower customer acquisition cost, marketing cost through partners. Fantastic numbers. Now, a little bit further down the stack, I'll pick on things like customer lifetime value. And then there's another metric that, at least within Anaplan, I really cared about, but customer lifetime value. This is where there hasn't been a lot of published numbers where partners attached are driving a much longer customer lifetime value. We actually did an analysis at Anaplan. I worked with the finance team and operations people to sort of get a maybe objective view about that increased lifetime value. And we had a great story there with the partners that were attached to our customers. I think we inherently know this, but to have numbers to back it up is sort of the point here. And this is kind of hard to pull these numbers together. Let me explain that very last metric. My last job, I was involved in technology partnerships, and we invested working with product very heavily in integrations. And a lot of finance people may say, gee, we're investing $1 million, I'm making that up, for engineers to drive APIs and sales development kits, SDKs, to allow partners to integrate. So what's the value of all those integrations?
Right. How does that help?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the point being that the more customers leverage those integrations, they are more likely to expand and adopt your platform or your software product. And so we found at Anaplan that the average revenue run rate was 3 times higher for those customers that had 3 or more integrations. And of course, if they had 2 or more integrations, it was a bigger number than all those customers that had no integrations. So the point being, the more you can drive those integrations, that's the value to the company. It's a very sticky relationship. Those customers tend to be your most adopted, highest revenue band of customers. And so I think that, again, a great story if you can bring numbers to prove that out.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you just mentioned it, but a lot more sticky as well, right? Because they've got the integration, they built the integration, they put the time and effort into doing that. If they're going to swap, if you're going to take you out, then they've got to rebuild a new integration, or think about, does it even actually work with the old, all of those things. You're definitely embedded.
Yeah, maybe another term to use is the switching costs are very, very high when
Yeah.
they've got you highly integrated into a lot of the core data streams or core systems that they use for running their business. So that's what we all hope for, is that we're deeply embedded in the way they run their business. And so that's
Yeah.
again where these integrations and running on hyperscaler platforms increase the switching costs.
That's great. And you cite some sources here. I think, IDC has some good data points. Canalys has some good data points. EY has some great research on ecosystems and talking about the you know the the influence of partners on having a strong ecosystem, much higher win rates, lower cost of acquisition, and gosh, there's a lot of research out there, right? So
There is, and frankly, I'm hoping we could start to get a little bit more consolidated view about the different areas that I'm advocating. You're right that I think the very top quote in this slide actually did come from that Ernst and Young story, and so these are obviously highly respected firms that have looked at lots of company data, and as you invest in these ecosystems, these are really top and bottom line benefits through those ecosystem investments. So I think it's important for all of us to kind of think that bigger picture about the impact.
yeah, that's great. Love it. Okay, so let's talk about how you get this is great information. What are you going to do about it? How to get started?
Yeah. So this particular slide I put together just to chronicle kind of how I had a large team I was working with at Anaplan went down this path. So it wasn't just me personally, but obviously I had a lot of people in partner and revenue operations assist me. I had people in finance, but I would argue for many firms, and to your point, Chip, after working for 10 plus technology firms, there's a repeated pattern that starts to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
So I would advocate the simple starting point here is just to focus on the sales process. How do you get the sales efficiencies we kind of open the conversation with? Most of that data, it's all in your CRM system, whether it's Salesforce or HubSpot, Microsoft Dynamics. And so that's the simplest way to kind of start to go down this path. The key initial step is making sure you've added the right partner attribution. So as you're chronicling your opportunities, how do you make sure that the opportunities are tagged with what partners are involved, the role they're playing? Is it partner sourced? Is it partner influenced? What's the role? And that tees up then some of the sales-oriented metrics you could see in the bottom here. You can then chronicle just over the course of what your CRM naturally does, the win rate, the deal sizes, the overall sales cycle as you go from stage to stage. And that's all fantastic data to prove to the chief revenue officer and other sort of sales leaders, even to people in the field. Often I found, when you're working with sales leadership out in the field, they naturally, they may or may not have had a lot of experience working with partners. And so this kind of data is critical for getting them to buy in, to advocate to their sales teams, why work with partners? How do the partners add value? So that's where I'm just saying the sales team tends to be the first group to work with. The walk step that I'm showing here, or phase, is then adding on the marketing influence, where for many companies, and this was true at Anaplan, we were using a marketing resource management system. In our case, it was Marketo, that was tightly integrated to Salesforce. So again, if you can just add the partner attribution into the MRM system, then a lot of the metrics will start to flow about, the cost from a conversion perspective, the conversion rate, all those great marketing metrics that your marketing team cares about will bring that partnership view and lens onto some of those metrics. So that's kind of why I called it walk. It's an incremental, but a little bit easier step to go down, consolidating the influence for the marketing programs, the MDF funds that you're spending with the partners. The hardest one is the run part. So this is where, as you may believe in what I said about we do need to track the customer lifetime impact from partners, but how do you track some of those downstream benefits? And there's really two schools of thought here that I was recommending. One is for many companies, you often have a data warehouse that does start to consolidate a lot of the operational data, the marketing, sales, and even the financial operational data. And so if you've got a data warehouse, that may be the best place to pull together the NRR
Hmm.
rates with partner attached customers, the lifetime value, some of those metrics, because that's clearly what your finance team is tracking. And if you're a public company, you're reporting anyway. So that's one approach. Another approach from a prior company that we took is actually we were using Gainsight as our customer experience
Hmm.
or customer satisfaction platform. That was integrated to Salesforce. So we ended up at a prior company just capturing that data inside of Salesforce as an extension to kind of show the lifetime value, adoption rates, things like that. So I'm
And then
going through
marrying
it
that
really quickly.
with the partner
Exactly.
attached. Yeah.
And that's where in each of these phases, there's almost a different object in the systems to sort of focus on. In crawl, it's the opportunity object. In walk, it's the lead object. And in run, it's often the account or customer object. You say, okay, which accounts have partners attached to them or associated with them? So that's why it shifts around a little bit to kind of get the right metrics going. But as I said, this is hard. And, Chip, I'd love to see at some point down the road, WorkSpan help come out with a module that makes this a little easier for companies to come out with dashboards that would show these partner unit economics, because I think there's huge value here. And if you could share that with, the leadership across your company, that to me would be really powerful as a business opportunity for WorkSpan.
Chris, I love this idea. I mean, gosh, we have data, coming out of our ears and dashboards, but I like this concept of aligning it in this way and focusing on these metrics. We've got the mechanism there, but then take those dashboards and say, okay, here's my dashboard for the CMO, here's my dashboard for the CRO, here's my dashboard for the CFO, pulling in these metrics.
Absolutely. And believe me, if you get, that cast of C-suite guys using these metrics, your CEO will get involved, and even your board. And that's the whole point is how, once you get visibility to the numbers, you can then say, okay, what initiatives do we need to drive to improve the efficiency behind these numbers? And that's the right spirit here. With numbers, you can start to measure and determine how do we make progress and incremental progress in areas.
Yeah. So how long did this process take for you to sort of, from concept and you've accumulated over a number of years with different companies, but say at Anaplan, what
Yep.
was the process for you to kind of put some of these in place?
Yeah, I would say I'll give some ranges based on in the crawl phase, at least at Anaplan, we were able to start to track the sales efficiency numbers within 3 months. We were getting some good metrics, initial early data on for the deals we were closing. We had the partner attach attribution done. You can start to track things like the win rate, the sales cycle, the average deal size, and over time, you'll see these numbers improve. Almost every company that invests in partnerships, you see these numbers improve when you start to track the partnership side.
Yeah.
On the marketing side, that was kind of the phase 2 for, frankly, my AWS partnership was how do we start, you really start to focus in on what joint marketing initiatives are we going to really concentrate on that are driving high ROI? And candidly, it took us a year at Anaplan to kind of start to get the process figured out working with AWS. And so that one's a little bit longer. And a lot of it goes back to, do we do physical events together, like industry
Mm-hmm.
conferences? Do we do ebooks? There's a lot of different marketing options. And so this is where I think in marketing, you especially have to have looking at the ROI bar, to say, okay, which of these generated the most returns or not? And let's double down on the ones that really are driving the most marketing efficiency. So that candidly took us a year. And that was after wiring together the metrics to be able to monitor this, but that's the point. Is we
Right.
started to learn about what's driving ROI.
Get that feedback loop going.
Yeah.
Right? And then make adjustments as you're going.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the third phase, the run phase that I talked about, where you're looking at things like lifetime value, we had the benefit of the fact that a lot of our operational data was in fact tracked. I'm going to call it a data warehouse. It was actually running on our own business planning platform, but we could do that in about 6 months. It was, advocating that I get a few resources to pull out these metrics and to start to track which of our customers had partners attached and how are they impacting lifetime value. So again, if you've got this sort of data warehouse approach, you just need a data analyst to come in, assist you. You look at the right metrics you care about that you want to track with finance and operations, and then that set of numbers starts to get generated. That one's a little bit simpler, again, if you've got this sort of corporate data warehouse at stake. Not every firm's got that. You could do this in Excel too, but that's much more manual work.
Nice. Well, congrats on putting this all together and the success at Anaplan, and for sharing these ideas and concepts with the community.
No, my pleasure. And frankly, all I'm trying to do is just keep the ball moving. My hope is that I see other companies and articles coming out about this topic, that I think this is just the start. And I think the more we can focus on what's going to drive that efficiency that we all care about today, the profitable growth that so many firms are pivoting to go after these days, I think there's a phenomenal partnership story behind it. But I wanted, other companies to join in and reinforce that.
Yeah, fantastic. Chris, we have a couple minutes left, and one of the things that I love to sort of ask partner leaders who have had a lot of experience, what are some things that you picked up along the way that you might want to share? This clearly is a big one, but any other sort of things that you've learned along the way, or advice you've gotten early on that helped you in your role as a partner manager and then as a leader that have really been productive for you?
Yeah, I think, Chip, I would argue early in my career, there weren't a lot of opportunities to learn about sort of the state of the art on partnerships. It was just, it was kind of a hidden little part of the company. I, like so many people, started out in sales and did some product management, a little marketing, and then just loved the strategy impact and thinking that goes on behind partnerships. It's a much longer timeline to drive effective partnerships. So what I've learned is that in the last few years, I just think between what you're doing at WorkSpan, podcasts like this, what Partnership Leaders is doing, I think is a huge accelerator for all people that are younger in their careers thinking about partnerships. So we've now got so many great vehicles and communities to learn from each other, which I didn't have early in my career, candidly. I had my boss and that was it. But to be able to compare notes with other firms and benchmark, what does goodness look like, I think is huge. So I would advocate, take advantage of that when you have it, whether it's join Partnership Leaders, if you're not part of that. There's so much great material coming out now that didn't exist 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that energizes me. There's so much new material to learn and new approaches. And I just think that partnership story is still a little bit hidden from the rest of the sort of C-suite. You can tell I'm beating the drum too many times here, but I just think
we're working on that. We're advocating for chief partner officers, right?
Yes.
And growing the number of chief partner officers, and companies are responding too, which is phenomenal. I think Microsoft actually started to do chief partner officers within regions. SAP the same way, but you're seeing announcements for sort of overall chief partner officers coming out regularly these days too. So,
and I would argue having a little sort of financial underpinning about if you think of as you're growing up in the influence that the partnership team has got, you've got to be having at your fingertips sort of the financial metrics about impact. It's like running your own franchise. This is your P&L. And so I would argue these kind of metric awareness is going to be critical as we all grow our partnership careers to be a member of the C-suite and having a seat at the table. So it's a competence I think needs more visibility as well for partnership leaders.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, thank you. Thank you for taking the time.
No, thank you for having me join. I very much appreciate this opportunity.
Fantastic. So I think with that, we'll round out the session, and thank you, Chris, for joining. Thank you all for joining another episode of Ecosystem Aces, and we will see you next time. Actually, I'm going to be heading tomorrow to the Google Partner Marketplace Exchange event in Mountain View, and we've got a Denver event coming up next week. If you're in Denver, come by the Partnership Leaders event on Thursday, and gosh, PL has a bunch of events coming up as well. So, all right.
Thank you, Chip. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you, Chris.